Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you here today. We are driving down the road, heading over to softball. Coming to my mind, a lot of people out there picking up Wrestlemania tickets for the upcoming year in Philadelphia. We went to Wrestlemania so many years in a row. It's been a long time, honestly. Probably one of the things I miss the most about that is hanging out with my friends and getting to meet the wrestlers, take pictures and get autographs from guys at WrestleCon and events like that, access. I think that's some of the coolest times there is to be out there, but, people already, narrowing it down to head on up to Philadelphia, picking up their tickets. Man, that ticket price has a little bit of a sting to it, especially when you think of all the events that you're going to have to pick up tickets to go along with it like I was saying. The access tickets, your WrestleCon tickets, NXT. There's always going to be the Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame taking place in Philadelphia this year. I know it's been a little while since we had like a Made in that City Hall of Fame class, but it's always been one of the things when you're looking at where WrestleMania is, you always dream of like, who's going to go in that year because of either something that happened there, their career started there, they were born there, they had a big moment in that one spot. A WrestleMania happened there, that they happened to win the championship or something like that, and it's sort of like the crowning jewel on their career to go into the Hall of Fame at that one spot. With it being Philadelphia, the one thing I think about more than anything else is ECW. ECW, they've already put in Rob Van Dam, who had a lengthy career in WWE. He wrestled for Impact. He wrestled for TNA, ECW. Probably when you look at his run, he probably was in WWE longer. But I think that most people think that, him finding his career, he never got to be the main guy because of the ankle injury. I bet you he's known for ECW more, but I bet his career in WWE was longer than his run there. But if anybody else from ECW is going to go in, of course you think of Raven, Tommy Dreamer, Taz. Well, Taz probably wouldn't go in because of the AEW thing, and they wouldn't want to bring somebody from the other company and put them up on the stage. But to me, the one person, honestly, that I think deserves to go into the WWE Hall of Fame from ECW makes you think of Philadelphia, and even honestly could probably be a headliner to this class of WrestleMania 40 in Philadelphia, is Paul Heyman. It's hard to really narrow down what you remember Paul Heyman being in his career. Most people will honestly think of his time running the company ECW. Of course, you remember the documentary of him, editing video in his parents' basement, him, having to beg, borrow, and steal to keep that company afloat, sort of being like a cult leader to keep those, awesome wrestlers working for him that, went on to have careers in WWE and WCW, keeping them as long as they can when the checks just aren't there, and he's having to look people in the eyes and lie to them, about, the check's going to be good, knowing that, you're just trying to get them out of the building so they're not looking you in the eyes, and you can escape to get to the next town, and that they're going to show up at the next town to at least get the money that they're, looking for today. I think of that, but, his career, goes back to, he has awesome stories about, working at the nightclubs in New York City. He started in WCW, where he had the Dangerous Alliance, an awesome, group of guys, Arn Anderson, Larissa Bisco, Stunning Steve Austin, Medusa. They went on, they had a main event in a War Games. Sting Squadron went up against them, probably one of the biggest moments that there is there. He ended up getting fired from WCW. I think that it was all a part of like a deal where they were trying to cut costs, and they found out that a lot of guys were just taking the plane tickets that they were being given and cashing them in for cash, sort of abusing the system and cheating WCW out of money by using the airlines to give them the cash because the airlines were just charging, or they were just using the tickets that they were being used to do WCW things for just their own things, to just fly to Hawaii or, you know, this, that, or the other. It was something along those lines. You know, of course, then he went on to run ECW. He ended up doing that until, you know, its dying day, and then jumped ship, where he became an announcer for WWE. He was the main announcer for Wrestlemania 17, possibly one of the greatest WrestleManias that most people think of. He was an awesome team with him and Jim Ross. I think that most people think of Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler as one of the best. I thought the Paulie on the Raw microphone was awesome. And I honestly think he's one of the best that ever do it in my mind. But I understand that a lot of people think that his time there was so short that it shouldn't count for as being one of the best. But he was fired off television when they ended up doing the whole alliance gimmick, and then WWE won, and they brought back Jerry the King Lawler, who he replaced because the whole ordeal with his wife sort of got fixed up, because Jerry left because his wife was asking for, I think, either more money or, you know, a better spot on the card. She walked out, so he had to walk out with her. They ended up getting divorced, so Vince was like, hey, you left because of her and you're not even with her, come on back. And Jerry did, and it just happened that it tied in with the whole alliance storyline at the time. From there, he went on to become like the head writer for SmackDown, sort of, you know, funneling in all the ideas right there. SmackDown had a great run where they were, you know, beating Raw and the ratings going up, you know, the B Squad against the A Squad, and probably doing something that they weren't really supposed to do. But then he ended up getting fired for listening to a Raw call when he wasn't supposed to, kind of like making sure that his ideas are better than the other call. His phone ended up dying, and he ended up getting kicked out of the conference call, and then announced to everybody on the Raw team that this person had left the call, and that sort of hung him out to dry. He said he was at a point in his life when he didn't really want to be there that much anyways, so it worked out. But he went out and he, you know, did other things, but, you know, wrestling ended up calling him back. I'm not really quite sure how long his exit was, but it definitely was a couple of years, because there were strong rumors that, you know, Paul Heyman was going to come back and take TNA, even after the Hogan Bischoff era had started. Going to take it back, run, you know, sort of the creative ideas and get them pumping. But it ends up that didn't work out. Either the money didn't line up or something like that. And he ended up going back to WWE to be Brock Lesnar's, what did they call him? He wasn't his manager, he wasn't his agent, he wasn't his lawyer, advocate. And they had one of the best runs there was out there. I think that honestly, when you think of Brock beating the streak, you think of Heyman with his face before we all saw Elvis's face in the crowd in the front row. And the shock was real. There's no way that Heyman didn't know what was going to happen, but you look at it and you're like, damn, that guy was surprised too. Of course, he would flip-flop there. He would, you know, have a run with Cesaro, which didn't really work out the way anybody thought it was going to, and as well as Curtis Axel, which didn't go anywhere. He was out there with with CM Punk before going back to Brock Lesnar, and then of course turning on Brock and joining up with Roman Reigns. And this run with the Bloodline, he's one of the main guys that's in there. And, you know, he's only kind of like the wise man, the manager on the outside, carrying the title and sort of giving Roman a little bit of a word of advice on television here and there along the way. But, you know, he's one of the ones that makes it tick. Of course, he's not getting in the ring with Roman Reigns, making those matches, you know, pay off for us. But, you know, he's one of the main dudes. I think his career stacks up with almost damn near anybody that's ever done it, whether if it's, you know, a manager, you know, somebody that's on the other side of the office, working in the creative room, which I don't think they've ever really put anybody into the Hall of Fame just because of what they've done backstage. But it doesn't matter which side of the camera he's on. You go back and you watch that documentary, My Name is Paul Heyman. It had to have come out, I don't know, years ago. It's probably on the network. Sometimes some stuff isn't on the network that I think is definitely going to be on there because it's not really that old. But before they stopped making the documentaries for DVDs themselves, and you see him as sort of being a word of advice to almost anybody that would listen to him. He sort of, in the documentary, he's really giving words of advice to Ronda Rousey, who had just come into the company, trying to make sure that she seems like a badass, making her feel welcome, making her feel comfortable, letting her, probably telling her strengths and her weaknesses and saying, make sure you use this, make sure you hide that, this is what you need to work on. And, that, really comes down to it. It's not even really his job. Of course, there was a time period when he was, I think it was, the whole thing was, they were fighting for TV contracts, and at the same time, they were, Vince was kicking off the XFL for the second time before, going into bankruptcy with it, and then, selling it over to The Rock. He was named the, creative director, something like that, of the Raw team. And that was, like, a real thing. That was not television. And, of course, that got him into a little bit of trouble. I think it was kind of like being, like, the real-life GM. Trying to keep all the wrestlers happy, make sure that they knew what was going on. Vince wasn't going to be able to be at every show, so, he had Raw, and then Bischoff had SmackDown. I don't really know if they were flying out and entertaining the USA Network or anything like that. I think it was just mainly being like the main guy behind the stage, but that didn't really last that long. He ended up getting fired. There was a little bit of a trouble if you go back and watch those interviews with the Good Brothers talking about how AJ Styles feels like that Paul lied to him, and he said he would never work with him. And it's been a while, and they're on the same brand right now, I think. Yeah, they're both on SmackDown. And I haven't seen them cross, and maybe that's hurting AJ. Maybe AJ drew that line in the sand, and maybe that's one of the reasons why we haven't seen AJ against Roman in the whole bloodline when they were building that up. But Heyman going in WrestleMania 40, honestly, I think that's a damn good idea. I think that it's probably one of the best bets there is to be out there. We saw Rey Mysterio go in, and he's been pretty damn near active this whole last year. I don't want to see a lot of guys, going in while their career's still going. But with Heyman, I think that mostly, you put over all the things that he's done, and he's still going with the bloodline. I think for the most part, the one thing that you would put him in more than anything else was, being that guy that pushed ECW from, not being, thought of as, wrestling in bars and bingo halls, to basically, finding a way to shoot it, adding the music, giving it that creative edge that people wanted to see. It was kind of like, why are people watching UFC? What do they want to see? What can we give them to that's different from WWE, different from WCW, that we can go out there and we can make the best product of what we have. Do we have, Hulk Hogan? Do we have the Ultimate Warrior? Do we have the Undertaker? No, but we've got 911. We can just have him go out there and give people a choke slam, and that's it. We can have a guy go out there like Taz, who's like just a suplex machine. That's going to be like a more of a technical wrestler. They can just beat anybody on the card. We got a guy like Sabu that can do anything hardcore-ish. We got the Sandman, which I guess people are going to get stuck with, and he can drink a lot of beer and he can take a beating in there. So, he just turned this nothing into something. And I think he's the best bet for WrestleMania. Hall of Fame, right there. Top notch.